Hi, everyone. It's Elaine Hamilton from the Reiki Center. And my theme for 2024 is looking quite deeply at people pleasing. And it's something I've been aware that I do this for a long time, but for some reason, don't know why, it seems to be really falling apart at the moment, which I'm really happy about. But as it is falling apart, I'm starting to realize certain patterns that were holding it in place. And so maybe just by talking about my own experiences, it might help some of you. I have definitely noticed that Reiki, healing modalities, spiritual growth in general tends to attract very empathic people. And a lot of these people tend to be people pleasers. You might not label yourself as such. I certainly didn't label myself as such until I started looking more deeply at some of my patterns and how they were pretty unhealthy, actually, and probably still are. You know, it's an unfolding thing. You learn about yourself, you grow, and every relationship, no matter how difficult, how toxic, how healthy, unhealthy, is always a learning process. So sometimes our most challenging relationships are actually the most important in terms of our own personal growth and development. So in this video, I wanted to talk about the kind of the toxic side of spiritual growth. And it's something that I noticed in myself, but it was one of those things I didn't really notice until I had kind of separated from some of my more toxic relationships. And I realized that part of the benefit of growing spiritually is your ability to transmute negative emotions. So, as I'm sure all of you have also experienced, the more spiritual growth, the more Reiki you do, the more you become more aware of your own habits, your own patterns, um, your ability to transmute your own negative emotions become stronger. You get better at it. And in that sense, you build capacity in yourself to handle more stress, right? So it's kind of like you get really good at transmuting your own stress. You get really good at calming yourself down. You get really good at inner peace. You get really good at all this stuff. And if you're a people pleaser, it also means you get really good at transmuting everybody else's shit. So sometimes that also um, becomes a it becomes a strength of yours, and so you give more. So often, as is the case, it's like your capacity grows. And what it allows you to do is it allows you to be in very toxic environments and not get sick. So you get to stay in them longer. That's not necessarily a good thing. It gives you capacity to, or resilience to weather the storms better. So, whereas if you didn't have Reiki, or if you didn't have some kind of energetic healing modality or meditation or yoga or something that you were doing to really manage your own stress, what would happen is you would get sick, right? So for a lot of people, when they're in very narcissistic relationships or they're in very toxic relationships, the first thing that will start to happen as this controlling influence starts to really impact them is they get sick. And often that will be IBS, it will be solar plexus digestive issues, right? Because it's the solar plexus chakra that is affected. And it will also be fibromyalgia or pain in the body, resistance in the body, kind of like the body's way of just screaming out that this is a really damaging energetic exchange that is happening with this person. That's normal. And so for a lot of people, they start getting these red flags because their bodies actually start physically breaking down, and the stress in their bodies start to really scream out that something needs to be done. Now, not to say that's a good thing, but it is quite a strong red flag. for a lot of us. It's kind of like, oh, I'm getting really sick. This person and my relationship with this person is making me really sick. That's not a good thing. Now, the thing with doing something like Reiki is, as we all know, we can really start to make a difference in terms of our physical well-being. And so maybe you come into it in a toxic relationship, in a narcissistic relationship, and then you start doing your Reiki and you find, oh, I can get rid of a lot of these symptoms. So maybe your fibromyalgia starts to improve. You can start managing the pain better. Your IBS kind of starts to clear up. All these things start to happen, and you think, oh, this is great because I'm managing all of these ailments, these illnesses, but you're not dealing with the root cause. And the root cause is the fact that you're allowing yourself to be taken advantage of. You are staying in a toxic environment that is not good for your own sense of worth, that you are allowing somebody else to use you as a trash can, or to use you to trauma dump, or to use you to offload their negative emotions. You're allowing somebody else to control you, to exhibit abusive behavior. And because you have found spiritual growth, energetic growth, these modalities, you are managing those symptoms. But managing those symptoms doesn't give you the deep peace that many of us come into this whole practice to seek. So it's like a Band-Aid. And there does come a time where you really have to forego the Band-Aid and look very deeply at your patterns if that's what you want to do. Like, I'm not saying you have to do that. For some people, when they find themselves in very toxic relationships, it may be almost impossible to get out, or you may not be able to see a way out, or you may choose to stay because you're like, actually, I'd rather be with this toxic person because they give me financial security, or they give me some form of other security, and I'm willing to live with that. And I come across a lot of people that make that decision too. And I'm not judging that at all. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that or you can't do that. Obviously, there's a cost. When you're in a toxic relationship, there is a cost. And if the cost is just mental abuse and you're managing your physical symptoms fine because you're doing your Reiki and you're doing all that kind of stuff, okay, that's your decision. But be very clear that that's your decision. And I think that's the other thing that's really important, is that often we put ourselves in these positions where we increase our capacity to take in and transmute toxic behavior from others. And we somehow feel we're being more useful by doing that. Oh, look, I can take on other people's negative emotions. I can be more helpful. I can be more important in the family unit because I'm more needed, all these kinds of things. It may feel at the time as if you're doing a good deed, but ultimately you're not. Because ultimately what you're doing is you're enabling very toxic behavior in others. And that also means that they never really get a push to grow either. They stay in their toxic patterns because you're busy taking any of their excess kind of negativity away from them. So if you have a partner or a family member or loved one who every time they get mad, they just like kind of explode and they just explode all over you, then you might think, oh, this is fine because I can take it. I'm spiritual enough. I'm, enlightened enough. I'm whatever. I can transmute this into love. But one, I think you're kidding yourself. I was certainly kidding myself. It was impacting me and it was hurtful. And I did feel singled out. And I felt that, ultimately at the end of the day, I was allowing a kind of treatment that nobody else in my family circle was allowing. And so I got it. And that is something that in my mind, I had some warped belief system that was like, oh, well, I can do it because I'm stronger. I'll admit it. there's some weird spiritual ego that goes on, honestly, when we start getting into the nitty gritty of this. And sometimes it's really useful to be honest with yourself around that spiritual ego that says, oh, I'm so spiritual, or I have so much Reiki, I'm so powerful that I can transmute everybody else's negativity and help them out. But you're not actually helping them out, because all you're doing is you're stunting their growth, because they don't need to look at their own patterns. They get angry, they don't have to deal with it. They get upset, frustrated. They don't have to think about the belief systems behind all that, because you're busy there with the trash can, scooping it all up for them. So ultimately, you're actually not doing anybody any favors by behaving like this. And not only is it not helping them, but it's certainly not helping you, because at the end of the day, when you allow this kind of behavior, or if you allow somebody to treat you in a way that is diminishing you, or making you feel smaller, or making you feel less important than others, all these kinds of things, no matter how spiritual you are, there is a personality system, or a soul, if you like, that is quite fragile. It likes kindness, and it likes gentleness, and it likes love and loving behavior. And so over time, this will take its toll, and it will take its toll on you as a person. And it also takes its toll on the energy that you are able to transmute outwards. So yeah, so I don't really know if it's a particularly helpful spiritual mindset to be thinking, oh, the more spiritual I get, the more capacity I get, and therefore the more ability I have to take on the toxicity of the environment. Not sure that's the way to go. But I'm just going to leave you with that thought, because ultimately it is one aspect, I think, of people pleasing that we sometimes miss. It's hard to admit, like, hands up. It's hard to admit that it's part of my own motivation for getting into all of this spiritual healing, energy healing, all this kind of stuff, was always to heal myself. But then now I'm starting to see that actually I then got into that position in the family system, maybe my friendship systems, whereby I was the one that everyone came and dumped on. And I felt needed, and I felt important, and I felt, oh, I can do this because I can just be dumped on, and I've got Reiki and I'll sort it out for them. That is not a particularly empowering position. And it does smack of ego, and it also smacks of this kind of sense of superiority, that you can do it better than anybody else. You can do it better than them because they can't do it, so you have to do it for them. These are not good motivations, should I say. So just going to leave you with that as food for thought. If you are beginning to see yourself as a people pleaser, or if you just have a lot of people that dump on you all the time, it's like, why are you allowing it? Like, what, really honestly, why are you allowing it? Why are you letting that behavior happen in your life? There's a benefit to you, because if there was no benefit, you wouldn't do it. That's just the honest truth. There is a benefit, and the benefit might be really hidden, and it might also be really childlike, like something you picked up because of the childhood dynamics you were in as a survival mechanism. But sometimes it's good to re-look at all of these mechanisms that we have going on, because we turn into adults, and as adults, we have different choices, and there's a different level of survival required. It's kind of like, if we're not taking on someone else's trash, we're not going to get thrown out of anything. Whereas when we're younger, we might have this false sense of insecurity, that if we don't do what the system wants us to do, or what the person wants us to do, then somehow they might chuck us out the house, or they might chuck us out of the family system. And as children, we would be extremely vulnerable. So as children, we are extremely vulnerable, and therefore a lot of the defense mechanisms are built in childhood. But then as adults, making your own money, doing your own thing, living in your own house, there's a different level of capacity in that. And so it's really useful to look back over some of your habits and patterns and just have a reevaluation of them. Are they still serving me? Is this still the way that I want to go forward? Or is it time to do something different? And the idea also of empowering others to solve their own issues and to empower others to come face to face with their own inner demons is really the best thing you can do for others in terms of self-empowerment and personal growth. So that's that topic. And I will talk about other topics as well, because at the moment, as I said, this is something I am digesting very deeply. So it's kind of fascinating for me at the moment. And I'm learning a lot about myself, about the system I'm in, and also about what I kind of start seeing when the whole thing starts disintegrating. That's also really interesting. And so that will be the next video. Okay, take care.